Look, we all know and read every day about the increasing and real threat of cybercrime. But what do these threats actually look like? And what are some of the practical ways to implement protective measures?
Maybe you've got a question. How do I deal with a particularly difficult client? This guy here is the on-call personal practice consultant for all lawyers and firms insured through AltaPro. AltaProRPG.com. Shoot us an email. And before you can say problem solved, the risk pro will show up and together we'll brainstorm a solution.
There are a couple different ways that we see fraudulent funds transfer loss, and they're often very unsophisticated frauds that lead to large loss, and especially in some large law firms that deal in real estate, wills and trusts, things like that. And you see a lot of times an email, a purported email from the owner of the company or the CFO of the company internally to say an administrative assistant, or more likely someone in the accounting department to send out a wire. And a good example is the payment of vendors. So a company was going through a large scale remodel of their offices. They were really excited about it. Administrative assistant / do everything person in this smaller company received an email from the owner of the company saying, hey, wire out $400,000. A couple weeks later, they said, hey, I made that payment you asked. And what payment? And by that time, 2 weeks had passed, so recalling the wire didn't work. The scary thing about that example is no one was breached. Is you can go to any company's website, and if they have their leadership team, you can find out who the CFO or the comptroller is. You go to LinkedIn. It's not necessary, right, that you actually have a computer breach to get there. The lawyer will be holding funds for a real estate closing. Emails saying, don't wire the closing funds here. Wire them over, to this bank account, this bank address. The paralegal may be the one who has the authority to initiate the wire. And then you have a client or an opposing party in a sale, the opposite party in a sale, who either says, one, I want to buy that property and now I don't have, the funds didn't go there, or two, where's my seller proceeds? And so it's the number of that factual scenario, the amount of times we see that is just, it's really astounding. And it's especially true in the small 1 to 10 people law firms that specialize in real estate closings. Money.
You're right on the money. A lot of our attendees are just who you described, small firms, 1 or 2 lawyers. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to sort of understand how this works. And when you mentioned the bad guys can get your email from LinkedIn or wherever, most everybody's website has contact info and has your email.
Is that 99% of cybercrime fraudulent funds transfer loss will be prevented by a phone call. And the phone call that I'm talking about is the person who sends you the email. Call them and ask them, hey, did you just send me these wire instructions? I almost say that this wouldn't be a topic of discussion if that phone call were made. Again, it doesn't take an IT professional to pick up the phone and say, did you just send me these wire instructions for $250,000? And
yeah,
so,
and Jamie, I think you're absolutely right. The phone call it's not the foolproof method, but it's the method that works every time. Like we try to teach people a lot how to identify an illegitimate email, but they're getting more believable all the time. So it's just like a race to constantly keep up with the attackers, but making that phone call is so important. I think I'd also add, because I find a lot of our clients where we're responding to incidents like this, I'd also add to make sure you're calling the real person. A lot of these cyber criminals will take, so say they're pretending to be me, they'll take the Nathan Little signature, they'll use a different phone number in that signature block. You may call them and they might say, yeah, it is me. We had to change our bank last minute. We're in a bit of a hurry. Can you make sure that you wire it today? So calling a contact method that is that person, especially if it's somebody that you can't identify their voice easily on a phone call.
A lot of it boils down to communication, doesn't it? That's so much of a key to all risk management, clear communication, right?
That's why what Nathan's going to talk about is so important, because there are ways to address these problems once they happen, but the best way to do it is to make it not happen in the first place.
It really comes down to their business model, because that's what it is for them. These groups, it's a business. They know that if somebody pays for them to delete data and they don't do it, their reputation, they have a brand of attack that they do, they won't be able to get paid in the future. How can you take some really simple steps to hopefully not be a victim of an extortion attack? Safe remote access, especially last year. 2020 was the year for cyber extortion attacks. If the attackers compromise your usernames and passwords, or they are able to use some sort of misconfiguration to their advantage, they can access your systems and your network the same way that you do. But it's really their favorite and easiest attack method. So we're going to go over how to make sure your work from home access for you, your employees, is safe.
The polling results, almost 80% are working from home, at least part-time, and 60%, 6 out of 10, are allowing members of their team to work from home.
This is an example of what using Windows Remote Desktop Access to access your work network would look like. So you see the remote desktop connection window is opened. It's really just that simple to use. And that's why so many people use it. Well, I use Windows Remote Desktop, but I have to log into the VPN first, which puts me on the network. That's different. And that's something to think about too. Smaller law firms, exposed remote desktop is the most common, what we call the root point of compromise, the cause of cyber extortion incidents for those law firms. So then with that, the common question is always, well, what is a safe type of remote access? It should require some sort of multi-factor authentication, second form of authentication. After you enter your password, have to use an authentication app to enter a 6-digit code, something like that. The other thing that does happen, although rare and we can typically work through it, is the decryption programs purchased, they don't always work. For the most part, they will unlock the data and they will get the data back, but we can run into a lot of corruption. A lot of other issues can come up. For backups, there was a question, can backups be impacted by ransomware? The answer is yes, and all the time. A fairly simple piece, just making sure that you're running antivirus software on each workstation, each laptop, each server, each system. That's just a nice layer of protection that ideally you'd have somebody manage, like an IT provider or somebody at your office.
And this doesn't mention the insomnia, staying up at night, pulling your hair out, as if lawyers aren't stressed enough already. So there's lots of bad stuff, and it isn't all just dollars and cents. Talking to your insurance carrier and your agent, talking to your team, training your team about this stuff. It's not just for lawyers. It's for everybody. This is a firm issue, not just a lawyer issue, firm-wide.
The Altipro Risk Purchasing Group is committed to delivering, high quality value-added services, designed to help you manage risk. That's the whole point of it.